I'm the opposite of what they teach you at university, which is that AkzoNobel is my 10th employer in at least 5 different sectors. So all the stuff that you're not supposed to do.
After your studies, you went to Total. So
Yeah.
why Total and what did you do there?
Well, as much as I hesitated as to whether I was going to study engineering or something else, once I got into engineering, I found it really interesting. And I wanted to have the first job that was in a technical industry. I was going to be working offshore. It was pre-internet. Working offshore meant that you were on an oil rig in the middle of the ocean. There was no internet, so you were cut off from the world. So for 2 years, I worked offshore on a piece of metal in the middle of the ocean. 28 days in a row, from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. I mean, I learned more in those 2 years about leadership than I did in the rest of my career. I remember exactly what he said. He said, "It's night, we're in the middle of the ocean, they'll never find your body." You learn data-driven analysis and you learn the art of presenting something. And if you only learn these 2 things, you're set for life.
What was your job at Sulzer?
This time I was the CEO. I was the top guy in a public traded company. And which is something completely different.
So let's move on to AkzoNobel.
AkzoNobel is a really exciting company that has wonderful products, that has strong brands, that has strong market positions in paints and coatings.
Dear students, welcome to the CEO Leadership Series. My name is Cheng Wang Li, and it is an incredible pleasure for me to present to you the CEO of AkzoNobel. AkzoNobel is a world-leading paintings and coatings company with more than 35,000 employees around the world and revenues of more than 10 billion euros. It operates in over 150 countries, and it's actually also one of the oldest companies in the world with a history that can be traced back to 1792. In addition, AkzoNobel is one of the most prestigious and influential companies in Europe, and certainly in the Netherlands, where it belongs as one of only 25 companies to the prestigious AEX index of the largest blue chip companies in the Netherlands. Mr. Grégoire Poux-Guillaume, or Greg, has been CEO of AkzoNobel since 2022 and is one of the most important and experienced managers in Europe and in the global coatings and paintings industry. In addition, he's arguably the most internationally well-versed managers, top manager and top executive in Europe and perhaps also worldwide, having lived and worked in Angola, England, France, Myanmar, the Netherlands, Scotland, Switzerland, and US, and perhaps many others that I've forgotten to mention. Greg has studied mechanical engineering at the École Centrale Paris in Paris and obtained an MBA from the Harvard Business School. He began his career at Total and then worked, among others, at McKinsey as a consultant in the technology venture capital area of Softbank and as senior managing director of CVC Capital Partners, one of the world's leading private equity firms, before taking on the role as CEO of Alstom Grid, later on GE Grid Solutions, and then becoming CEO of Sulzer, a Swiss industrial company, before becoming CEO of AkzoNobel, as I mentioned, in 2022. Now, it is an incredible pleasure for me to welcome Greg here to our campus, not only because of his immense renown and experience that I'm sure he's happy to share with you and that you and we can all learn from, but also because my team has been urging me to switch out this table because it has received some scratches over time, and I'm hoping to get a recommendation of what decorative painting we can use from AkzoNobel and perhaps even a good deal later on. So please help me and very warmly welcome Greg Poux-Guillaume.
What an introduction. I feel important already.
Wow. Thank you very much for visiting our campus and coming to our event series. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Let's perhaps start with the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about your life, from your childhood and youth?
Yeah, I'm French. I was born in France. My father was an executive in a metals company that doesn't exist anymore. It was taken over by Alken, then by Rio Tinto. I have 2 sisters. We lived in France until I was 11, and then my dad got transferred to the US. So I spent part of my childhood in New York from age 11 to 16. Then he got transferred to the UK. So 16 to 18 in the UK. And then my parents stayed in the UK. I went back to France for university for really absolutely no good reason, apart from the fact that I hadn't been in France for a long time and I thought it was exotic. Studied for 5 years, and my first job was in Angola in the oil industry. And then I had a series of different experiences, and I'm the opposite of what they teach you at university, which is that AkzoNobel is my 10th employer in at least 5 different sectors. So all the stuff that you're not supposed to do.
All right. Now, before we get into that, let's perhaps take one quick step back at your kind of university studies.
Yeah.
Why did you choose the subject of mechanical engineering, and would you have done, looking back at your 10 different employers, done anything differently?
I wasn't really sure what I wanted to study. I could have just easily have studied business in terms of interest. Actually, I was leaning towards applying to business undergrads, and I guess we're all influenced by our parents to some extent. My dad had worked for this French company, and in French companies in those days, if you hadn't studied engineering, you were like a second-class citizen. And he was obsessed with the fact that he was going to get his revenge through his son, and essentially convinced me that I was good at math. Why not engineering? I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Engineering sounded interesting, so I studied engineering. I wish I could tell you this was like a calling, but when you're 18, it's hard to figure out what you want to do.
All right. After your studies, you went to Total. So
Yeah.
Why Total, and what did you do there?
Well, as much as I hesitated as to whether I was going to study engineering or something else, once I got into engineering, I found it really interesting, and I wanted to have a first job that was in a technical industry. So I essentially wanted to put what I had learned to use. And I had moved around as a kid with my parents, so I had the international bug. So I wanted something technical, I wanted something international, and I was really, really worried about being bored. And what I mean by bored is, sort of sitting in an office waiting for things to happen. And I was a little bit restless, and the oil industry was exciting from that perspective, because you could do things that involved working with people in complicated situations at a really young age, and that was attractive to me.
All right. So can you describe a little bit what your job profile was, what you did at Total, and then how come you left Total?
Yeah. So actually my first job was with Elf. Elf is now part of Total, but at the time there were 2 separate companies. They were very competitive with each other. And my first job was in Aberdeen. I was a drilling engineer, which means that I was doing all the calculation and all the planning and the architecture associated to drilling exploration wells in the oil industry. So when you have seismic, you know that there might be oil in a certain place. It's offshore, and you have to put a rig, and you have to drill, and it's kind of like building a building. So you have to conceive the whole well, and then you have to execute it. And I was doing it on something really, really sophisticated. Oops, I think it's moving around. Something really, really technical and sophisticated.
All right.
Which was high pressure, high temperature fields. So I'm not going to bore you with the details, but it was kind of new, and we were feeling our way around, trying to figure out how it worked. And that was fun. I was working for 2 senior guys, French guy and a Scottish guy, and we did one really complicated well, and then I was out of a job because Elf had taken me on a 2-year contract right after university, and they didn't have permanent jobs. Okay. So I was out of a job, but the value of mentors, the guys I was working for, actually talked to their counterparts at Total, which was really a competing company, and got me a job there, saying, "Look, they liked me, they thought I'd done a good job, and they helped me stay in the industry."
All right, nice. So you went to Total, worked there,
Yeah.
and at some point you also left that company to do an MBA? Was that the reason?
Yeah, I'll touch upon the Total thing a little bit because it conditioned a lot of the things I did afterwards. I had done engineering in the office in Aberdeen, in Scotland. And at Total, the attraction at Total is that I was going to be working offshore. Now, working offshore, this was like, you guys, I don't know if you guys were born, this was like 1994. And it was pre-internet. Working offshore meant that you were on an oil rig in the middle of the ocean. There was no internet, so you were cut off from the world. And it was 28 days in a row offshore and then 28 days off. And I was the drilling supervisor, which is the person responsible for the drilling rig for 12 hours a day, because it's 24, but there's two shifts. And I was always the junior guy because I was 25. And the junior guy did 7 at night to 7 in the morning. So for 2 years, I worked offshore on a piece of metal in the middle of the ocean, 28 days in a row, from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. But I was on holidays half the time.
Okay.
Because the rotation thing was when you got off the rig, you were off for 28 days and then you had to go back on. So I did that north of Shetland, which is pretty much the Arctic Circle. And then afterwards I did in Angola, and then in Myanmar. So 2 years, what was really fun about it and what was really life-changing was that I got to interact with people in a complicated and intense environment, because drilling exploration wells is dangerous, and it's also really expensive. I was in charge, and I was way too young to be in charge, and I wasn't really competent to be in charge because I had the technical knowledge, but I didn't have the real life experience. And it was a wonderful learning because I had to work with people that were technically reporting to me but knew more than I did. And I had to find the balance between being a leader, but at the same time not being like a young schmuck, not being kind of not trying to be the boss in a sense that was going to hurt me at the moment where I needed those guys, because I needed them to share their experience with me. So I learned a lot. I mean, I learned more in those 2 years about leadership than I did in the rest of my career. It was a lot of fun. I worked in Angola. I got upset one night and everything stopped. And I thought, why are these guys stopping? It's really expensive. So I was flapping my arms and getting everybody go back to work. And these were all people from Angola. And at one point, they all huddle on one side of the drill floor. And it's in the middle of the ocean. It's all dark. And it's at night. And at one point, there was one guy who spoke English. And he walked across the drill floor. And he said that he and his colleagues had talked. And they had decided that I remember exactly what he said. He said, "It's night, we're in the middle of the ocean, they'll never find your body." And then he went back on the other side of the drill floor. And then afterwards, I decided to apologize and be nice, and everybody worked well together. But I learned a lot, and sometimes it was painful. Okay. And then my company thought that I had potential, but after 2 years on the rig, I wasn't able to make full sentences. I was limited in my communication because you're working with the same people for 28 days on the rig. It's kind of like being in prison. There's a moment you stop talking and you're just, you're grunting pretty much. So my company said, well, you have to do something else. And they put me in charge of drilling research and development. And I did that for a year. But while I was working in Angola, I had applied to business school and I got in. And therefore I left to go to business school in the US.
Okay. Looking back at your leadership experiences, how would you describe it? I mean, you already mentioned you tried to balance kind of, different aspects of it. And now looking back, how would you describe your leadership style at that time?
Well, I mean, when I was 25, I had no clue how to lead. I thought it was pretty scary. I was the boss. These were all like really, these were all people that the workers were always local, but the middle management was usually American, and usually it was guys whose first job it was after the Vietnam War. It was really that kind of profile. So you had these guys in their mid-50s and who hadn't gone to school, had a very different life, And I was like the young engineer showing up saying, I'm the boss. You know, it's really scary. I mean, people are not going to follow you just because you're the boss. But what they'll do is they'll like, if you don't understand that you need people, and if you don't understand that you have to somehow create a team where you don't abdicate your leadership responsibilities, but at the same time you're leaning on other people and letting them help you and express themselves. If you don't do that, what happens is that they let you be the boss, and at some point there's a problem. And to solve that problem, you need their real life experience. And they go like, so boss, what do we do? And usually it ends badly. So what you learn is that it's not about being the smartest person. It's not about being the most educated person. It takes, you know, I'm quoting Hillary Clinton, you know, but it takes a village. You kind of have to build a team of people with different skills and different experiences and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to express themselves while still fulfilling your leadership obligations. You know, there was a schedule, we had to stay on time, we had to do certain things. And it's hard to figure out. And the first few weeks were horrible. You know, I was scared the whole time.
All right. Well, you seem to have managed very well. You went to Harvard Business School. Can you maybe tell us what you did there, what your experience was there?
Well, I mean, I did an MBA, so you guys know what these things are. It was useful for me because I had studied engineering, so I never had an economics class. I didn't know accounting. I didn't know finance. I had no understanding of financial markets. So all of it was marketing. I'd never done marketing. So all of it was new and really, really interesting. But you know what you learn, the most important takeaways from business school were not really the academic aspects. It was more the exposure to people that they had all worked before, you know, before business school. Because in the US, usually you have to have a few years of experience, work experience before you're admitted to the better programs. So everybody came from different backgrounds, and it was an opportunity to kind of see what other people did and learn different things. And it does one really, really good thing, and it does one really, really bad thing. The really good thing is that you figure out that the world is a much bigger place and that you can do different things. The really bad thing is that it makes you completely delusional. You know, you think you can do everything, which when I look at my years after business school, and when I look at a lot of my classmates, a lot of us either, you know, the positive way of putting it is experimented in different things or got lost, you know, because when you're in business school, you tend to gravitate towards whatever's fashionable. And what's fashionable is not always what you're good at. So at Harvard, they said that whenever, you know, they did statistics of where the graduating business school class went in terms of industry, and they said that whichever industry was the biggest pool of you know, people going there after business school, usually that was past the bubble. It meant that the cycle was over, because business school students are not the most entrepreneurial. You know, usually you go to business school because you're not an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur, you're running full speed, and therefore it's a population, me included, that has a tendency to gravitate towards stuff that is already visible and fashionable and is not necessarily the best opportunity. So try to pick the cycle, the next cycle, not the previous one.
Good point. Good advice. Yeah. So what did you pick after business school?
Well, my situation was a little bit complicated because I wanted to do. I was interested in doing either private equity or turnarounds. Private equity because I was interested in the deal aspects that I'd learned at business school. You know, buying companies, transforming them, fixing them. Turnarounds is the same thing without necessarily the capital structure. You know, companies that are struggling where you're trying to put them back on the right path. And I was interested in that because it was leadership, it was a strategy, it was financial. It felt like really complete. But the problem is that I'd done drilling for 5 years and I scared everybody. So despite the fact that I had an MBA from Harvard, whenever I applied to these jobs, people said, well, you're like an interesting candidate, which whenever somebody says you're interesting in English, this is not positive, at least not in an interview. Like, oh, you're like a really interesting candidate, or you've got a really interesting profile, probably means like you're exotic, but we're not going to take you. And so I couldn't land where I wanted to land, and therefore I chose something that I felt got me closer, which was management consulting, and I joined McKinsey.
Okay. Can you describe your job at McKinsey?
I was a consultant. I was an associate right after business school. So the wonderful thing about consulting is that you get to try your hand at different industries in a short period of time. So the engagements will be 6 months, 3, 6, 9 months. You'll go from one industry to another. You see different things. You get to show that you're able to have an impact in different industries, which was important to me because I knew I didn't want to be a consultant over the long term, but I needed to, it was kind of like a finishing school, if that makes any sense. In the early 20th century, when I guess this was, you know what finishing schools are? When young ladies would be sent to finishing school where they learned to be like the perfect hostess, and it's kind of like that was that for me. I learned to data-driven analysis, which is what you learn in good consulting firm, which is really, really important. You learn data-driven analysis, and you learn the art of presenting something. And if you only learn these two things, you're set for life, honestly. Because what you find in most companies that you have a lot of people that think they're when you work in a company, you spend your time defending ideas, defending projects, and you do that by kind of making the data speak. So you take the data and you analyze the data to show that what you want to do is the right thing to build a business, to position the company in the market, to position a product, or whatever. So you've got to do the analysis, and then you've got to present it. And most people either don't know how to do the analysis, they rely on like emotional stuff, or they get confused and they make the data say the opposite of what it actually says. I don't know if you've ever seen people that present an analysis and you've got a graph and they're saying, and the conclusion is, and their conclusion is exactly the opposite of what the graph says. It happens in companies all the time because people don't know how to make data speak. So they don't know how to do data-driven analysis. And if they do, they are usually really bad at presenting. Because presenting is an art. What do you present? I learned how to do a storyline. Storyline is really important. When you make a presentation, you don't throw all the stuff that you've ever analyzed into one PowerPoint and hope it's okay. You figure out what the story is. And then each slide is an element of the story, and each slide has to have one message because people get confused statistically if there's multiple messages on one page. So this is what you learn in consulting. I didn't stay very long because have you guys ever done Myers-Briggs? That's probably, I'm an old guy, so Myers-Briggs is probably something more modern. But Professor Lee will tell you that it's one of these personality analysis tools where you do a test and it ranks you on, are you emotional or analytical? Are you extrovert, introvert? And what's really interesting about that analysis is that it gives you your profile, and then you can compare it to a book of people that are successful in a given job and what their profile is. And then you realize that most jobs have one profile, a dominant profile of people that are good, either because it's a job where you have to be analytical and you have to be analytical and an extrovert because you've got to sell or whatever. Consulting is the only industry that has two profiles of people that are good. There's the people that are consultants but then leave to do something else. That's me. And there's the people that are consultants and then become partner. And the people that are consultants and become partner, it's almost a perfect overlap with university professors, except it's university professors that like money. It's an aside, but trust me.
Right.
So, because if you think about it, a senior partner at a consulting firm is like a university professor. You're not doing the work yourself. You kind of know what needs to be done. You know the methodology, but your job is to get younger, less experienced people, but with more energy and more resources to do that analysis and get it to kind of the finish line. So it's similar in some ways, hopefully. I was not meant to be a consultant in the sense that I like doing things. So I was really frustrated in consulting because we'd have all this great strategy and we'd present it and the client would say, awesome, thank you. And I would be like, thank you. It means like, yeah, you got to leave now. We're going to do it ourselves, which I didn't like. So, but I learned these two really important things, data-driven analysis and the art of presenting. And those things have served me really well for the, to date.
Okay. That's the reason why you left consulting.
Yeah.
Did you leave, like in the classic story, you leave for a client that basically hires you, or did you leave to?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
And you remember what I said about people that come out of business school have a tendency to be one cycle late. I left to work for Softbank. Softbank, Masayoshi Son, Japanese billionaire, tech visionary, has a really, really big fund. The Vision Fund, it's well known currently because these guys overwhelmed the venture capital industry by deploying billion-dollar funds to an industry usually that was deploying smaller tickets. And if you've watched a movie about WeWork, they're the guys that put massive amount of capital into WeWork right before it exploded because people realized it was actually a real estate business. So, but that was the first cycle of SoftBank when they were doing software investments in Europe. And technology was a big thing. This was 2000, 2001. It was the end of the dot-com era. Venture was transforming from internet to software, and it felt really interesting with the technical background to go into technology investing. Except that I mistimed the cycle, and by the time I got there, I was there a year and a half, and then September 11 happened. This was already after the dot-com bubble had burst. The markets were bad. September 11 happened, and a lot of funds stopped investing. They essentially pulled back. I went to the office one morning. They said, "Oh, we're having a call with all the European offices in 2 hours." We got on a call, and they said, "We're stopping all investments. Go home. We'll call you." And they never called.
Okay.
I was 31 and I was unemployed. This is turning out into a terrible story. I'm sorry, you guys are like on a Friday afternoon. Anyway.
All
So
right.
I was unemployed at 31.
So what did you do then?
It was terrible because not because of anything material, because I was at an age where you can reinvent yourself. But it was terrible because my wife's German. She's a lawyer. She was working 6 days a week, and she had really long hours. I had really long hours, and we had a 4-month-old baby. And suddenly I was home, and I was the babysitter. So my wife would leave for her law firm in the morning, and she couldn't help herself. She'd leave me like stuff to do, And usually she'd say something that would really upset me, like, "Well, given that you have time," which I don't have time. I'm having a lot of important discussions about finding a job, But then I'd have to do errands, and our son was 4 months old, and I was home for it was 4 months before I got a job. Okay. So a lot of really interesting learnings from that, and I can tell you about it. But as an aside, which has nothing to do with business, it's I don't want to extrapolate based on one data point, but whichever parent spends a lot of time with a baby ends up being the parent the baby runs to when he hurts himself. Because we have a son and we have a daughter. My wife had stopped working when her daughter was born, and they're very, very close. And I was the babysitter when Tim was 4 months old until he was 8 months. And it was very irritating for my wife because I was kind of like the mom, you know. So I had to put him to sleep and all that, but it was fun. So all this to say that what's the John Lennon thing? Life is what happens while you're making plans, or as Mike Tyson said much better, everybody has a strategy until they get punched in the face. And Mike Tyson is the 20th century's premier philosopher. But I was punched in the face, and I was out of a job at 31 in the middle of an economic crisis, because that was 2001, late 2001.
So, how did you recover from that punch?
I did what you do when you get fired from something, which is that usually your feelings are hurt, whether it's your fault or not. I mean, this wasn't my fault. They stopped investing, but it still feels personal. So what you want to do is you want revenge, and what that leads you to is to try to get the exact same job, except better, so you can wag a finger afterwards. But one, it was really, really difficult because nobody was hiring in the investment world, and two, kind of 2 months into having discussions with venture capital firms, I started thinking, am I applying for those jobs because it's what I want to do, or am I applying for those jobs because I want revenge or I lack imagination? I'm trying to get the exact same job because then it feels like a continuum. And I came to the conclusion that I wasn't sure I wanted to do technology venture capital. I wasn't sure that was my calling, and I probably I missed having the job more than the job itself, I guess. So I started looking at other things, and this is where there's another lesson, which is that I work my network, and what I mean by that is you talk to a person who introduces you to a person who introduces you to a person, and really outside of normal job channels, I wasn't applying for jobs. I was just talking to people, and my message was, I'm interested in what you do. I have some skills. I'm on the market. We can try. I wasn't telling people I want you to give me, long-term employment. I was telling people I've got time and I'm willing, and if you want to try me out, I'm game. And I met somebody who it's a weird story, but he was running a real estate company, but actually he was a former private banker, and he was very close to a French retail billionaire, the guy who owned Carrefour, the big food retailer. And I met this real estate guy for something completely different. And then we agreed that I wasn't a good fit for real estate. And then he called me up afterwards and he said, you told me you're available and you're willing to try things. My friend, this retail billionaire guy, is trying to diversify his family holding, and he's interested in a business that's owned by another of his friends, and his friend has given him access, and he hired a law firm, a bank, auditors to do a due diligence, and he's got nobody to run the process. And I told him I had the perfect guy. It's you. Can you start tomorrow? Now, the guy he was buying the business from was Bernard Arnault. And the business was Sephora. So this wasn't small. I was doing like software venture capital deals, pre-revenue. We'd deploy like 5 million euros, and it was like really, really scary. And this was like a real business with like shops and products and people, and I had never done a due diligence. I'd never run a process of that size. I had no clue how to do it. So I told this guy, I appreciate your enthusiasm and your vote of confidence, but I've never done this. And he goes, you'll figure it out. So this was my first, well, maybe not my first, but one of a long series of jobs that I took with very little knowledge of how the hell I was actually going to do the job. which is another lesson, and it's another lesson actually more for the ladies in this room than for the guys in this room, because, and this is not gender stereotypes, this is academia. All studies show that women self-censor when they apply for jobs. If there's a job where a guy knows how to do 30% of the job, he feels he's qualified. The ladies, if you don't have 70% coverage of the skills necessary, you're not going to apply. And it's why companies change the way they advertise jobs, because there's a really, really interesting gender bias in terms of how the genders position themselves for opportunities. But to go back to me specifically, I didn't know how to do the job. I was honest, but he told me, yeah, you'll figure it out. And then I was thrown into the deep end of the pool, and I had to run this process. And in the end, we made an offer which wasn't accepted, and then I ended up doing another deal for them, and I ended up working for this Paul Louis, who's the guy who owned Carrefour, the retail billionaire. I ended up working for him for almost a year without a contract. Remember at the beginning, I said I'm available, I'm willing to try things, and so they could essentially asked me to leave anytime. I didn't have any social coverage. I didn't have anything, no unemployment, no nothing. But I don't know. I was like 31. My wife was working. It didn't feel like I was going to be struggling to feed myself. So I thought, let's go. And then when they wanted to offer me a contract, I wasn't sure I wanted to, because I realized that I enjoyed the deal-making aspect of things, but I also realized that working for a family is really, really strange, and it's probably only a good career path if you're part of the family itself. So I thought 31 is a bit young to lock myself into something where if I stay here, I have to do this forever, or work for another family, because you become less employable, because you're more kind of fall in a box where you don't have the brand names that people recognize. Doing deals for a family is not the same as doing deals for Morgan Stanley or CVC. Morgan Stanley and CVC is a calling card for other things. The family thing is a calling card to work for the family, essentially, or maybe another family. So I thought, well, this is really interesting, but this is probably too risky in terms of being a dead end. And also, I missed running a business. I missed, the oil rig thing felt like running something, So I told them that I was looking for something else, but that I would give them kind of, a few months of visibility when I did find something, and they were happy to have me continue until I had found whatever I was looking for. And then I found my next opportunity, also through kind of talking to people, this time with a real contract though, because this second child was on the way, I kind of have to. And I moved on. We parted good friends, and I moved to something completely different.
What was that something?
That something was Alstom. Alstom today, it's a public traded company. If you go online, you'll find it. You'll see it's a rail equipment company. It's locomotives and trains. It's Alstom and Bombardier merged their rail business. It's the largest rail equipment and systems company in the world. But before it was just rail, it was rail and power generation and electrical equipment. It was essentially, it was like the French Siemens. And you had General Electric, Siemens, and Alstom, and they were essentially, competing with each other. Alstom was going bankrupt. They had just fired their CEO. They had hired a new guy. The new guy hadn't taken the job yet. And a headhunter I talked to told me, hey, I've got something which is a bit unusual, but kind of corresponds to what you're looking for. Because I said, I want to go back to running a business, but because I knew that I had a weird background, the oil thing, then consulting, then venture capital, then doing deals for a family, you kind of have to be aware of what your cards are. And my cards were, I've done operational things, and I've done consulting, and I've done financial things, but I'm unlikely to get a job with a blue chip company, because they'll say, what's this weird background of you work for all these people? So who are the people who are going to hire me? And the answer, the people that are going to hire me are the people that don't have that many options, companies that are struggling, And also, when you're struggling, you need people that can do multiple things, because usually the timing accelerates, and being polyvalent is a positive. So the CEO was actually joining to do the turnaround, and he wanted somebody who'd done operational jobs, but he also wanted somebody who'd been either in consulting or in mergers and acquisitions, preferably both. Another example of how you position yourself when you don't have all the cards in hand. You know, if you've done 5 years at Goldman Sachs and you're talking to Morgan Stanley, it's really easy to position yourself, right? It's the same thing. You've got stamp of approval, easy. But in other situations, it's harder. So this guy told me, the company's going bankrupt. I'm starting next month. And he called me back and he said, you're not really what I'm looking for, but you're as close as I have the time to find before I start. So why don't you come and work with me? And literally what he said is, why don't you come and work with me? And if it doesn't work out, I'll fire you in 3 months, but we'll stay good friends. So I said, okay. And he didn't fire me. And it was the most interesting job I've ever had. So once again, I don't know why you guys are here on a Friday afternoon when it's sunny outside, but probably not because you want me to talk to you about paints and coatings or turbines or electrical equipment or whatever else I've done. But it's more, how do you navigate in this weird and complicated world where you kind of have to have a job, but it has to be something that you're interested in, and you have to make your own luck. And there's different ways of doing it. I'm explaining you my way, which is probably less standard or less mainstream than a lot of people that come to talk to you. But that was another job where I got the job, but it was like I was on a 3 months notice thing where it could have ended really quickly. Joined the company, and within a month and a half, we were insolvent, which means that in a company of 120,000 employees, we couldn't make payroll at the end of the month. Which technically means that you have to go into receivership, so you have to.
Well, it's very nice to see that A, you had a contract, and B, that such a nonlinear type of CV or background is very rewarding as well. So, can you maybe tell us about your job running? I believe it was Alstom Grid then.
Yeah.
Because it must have been very different, right?
Do you want me to accelerate my storytelling? Because you guys are going to be here all night otherwise, right?
Please keep going. It's very captivating.
Right. So I took this job at Alstom, and I was the head of strategy, business development, head of restructuring. I was essentially the CEO was a very, very, very impressive guy. The most intelligent person most intelligent person I know to this day. Also, huge personality, really, really abrasive. And I was essentially the guy that had to follow him around and translate his vision into actionable items. So he'd do things like say, we're going bankrupt, we have to restructure the company. The company was very, very heavy, sales were dropping. We had way too many people, and we couldn't make payroll. And part of, if you're talking to banks and trying to get them to refinance you, part of what they'll ask for is they'll say, you have to get your cost structure under control, because I'm not here to pay for things that you can't afford. So we had to do a lot of restructuring, which means a lot of people lost their job, which is really, really tough. And he essentially told me, go do it, which was very scary. He had these principles, which were good principles, where he said, well, we're going to lead by example, so we'll do the headquarter, we'll do corporate first. And we downsized corporate by 35%, which, my story's been fun at this to date, right? But that was really, really tough. You're talking to people, and essentially you're saying, look, 1 out of 3 has to go, And so it was a lot of really tough things that you had to do at an accelerated pace because the company was failing. And then we had to sell businesses, and then we had to refinance with our banks, and then we had to fight with the European Commission because the French government guaranteed part of our debt, and that's called state aid. And when you get state aid, you have to give remedies, which means that you have to accept some element of pain in order to rebalance the competitive landscape. So it was a lot of really, really interesting things. It lasted a year and a half. It was really intense. I worked all the time. We had small kids, and then a year and a half later, the company was back on sound footing. And I was asked to run a first business, a hydroelectric business, which was also struggling. So it was turning around the business. And then a second business, which wasn't struggling. It was a business that you had to develop, which was air pollution control. Essentially, it's a business that built equipment that handle all the emissions that essentially hurt the environment. So particles, NOx, SOx, CO2, which was a really, really interesting growth business. So I ran these two businesses, and then I had my midlife crisis, and I left. Should I go into my midlife crisis?
Sure, please.
This is I don't know if this is less linear but more entertaining that you guys were expecting. But my midlife crisis was that I had these interesting jobs, and I worked all the time, and I traveled all the time, and I was on the road 60% of the time because these were small businesses. The hydro business was both businesses were €1 billion. A €1 billion business in a company, you have to keep the structure light, which means that I was on the road doing a bunch of things all the time. Traveling economy, by the way, to like Brazil and China and wherever else. Sleeping on planes in coach. For 60% of your time, it's physically tiring. And I saw all my classmates from business school that were in private equity, and they slept in their own bed, and they were making really good money, and their wife saw them from time to time, and their kids saw them too. And I thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And also, I had a falling out with my mentor, who was the CEO of the company I joined to turn the company around, because I thought our strategy was problematic. He had a different plan, and I got frustrated. So I was frustrated by the strategy of the company. I was frustrated by my life. I was frustrated by the kind of ratio to the effort reward ratio. Thought I'm working a lot, so I thought there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more to life than seeing my kids on weekends and sleeping on planes.
All right. So
I left.
Okay.
So I left, and I joined the private equity firm, CVC, to do deals, which was really, really interesting. I love CVC. I love deal making. It was a lot of fun. But it was very, very different. And the very different aspect is one part of it was related to the firm itself, and one part was related to what actually makes me happy. So the part that's related to the firm itself is there's a lot of private equity firms where you try to do deals, but you also have a portfolio. And based on your skill set, you'll work on different companies of the portfolio. So I had run industrial businesses. There were industrial companies in the portfolio. I should have been asked to work on those companies once they were owned by CVC. But CVC has a philosophy which is called eat what you kill, which means that if you haven't done the deal, it's not your company. So I wasn't being asked to work on the portfolio, which was frustrating because I had the background for it, but I was being asked to do deals, which was frustrating because I didn't have any of the deal flow. Because you arrive, your desk is empty, and suddenly you have to start trying to find deals, which is really tough, by the way. So it was difficult at the beginning. Then it got exciting. I actually did a deal, and I closed it. And right after we closed the deal, I resigned. So I was I stayed at CVC 2.5 years. The measure of success is, are you able to originate and close a deal yourself, which I did. So I was kind of heading in the right direction. But in those 2.5 years, I realized that, I was sleeping in my own bed, and I was, I was spending more time with my family, but I actually really missed the people. I missed running a business, and running a business is working with people, trying to put the right person in the right job, generating excitement in the company so that people surpass what they thought they could achieve and actually, take the company to new heights. All the exciting thing about working with the people was I just missed it, and I was at that point I was 31, no 41. Sorry, 41. So I had my midlife crisis at 38, and at 41, I figured out what I wanted to do in life. So you guys have time, and I figured out that I like running companies. I like working with people and figuring out the strategy and fixing the operations and all these things. I like that more than I liked deal making and making money, because at the end of the day, you have to choose what makes you happy. And I decided that I wasn't going to choose what was going to make me wealthiest maybe, but I was going to choose what made me happy. And if you guys read the press, CVC just did an IPO. It's valued at stratospheric levels. It's by far the stupidest financial decision I've ever made to leave CVC. But it was also a really good decision, because I've been happy doing what I do for the last, I'm 54, 41, for the last 13 years, and I haven't regretted that decision.
I'm very glad to hear. And how did you end up with Sulzer? What's the next?
First, after CVC, I went back to Alstom.
Oh, okay.
I had a falling out with the CEO, but we still, it was like fighting with your dad, really. And they bought a business that I had tried to buy when I was at CVC. It was an electrical business, and then they called me to say, look, the CEO called me back and said, look, you should be running businesses. He understood what I was meant for more than I did, which is actually the good thing about having mentors. Sometimes because we all lie to each other. We all lie to ourselves. Between what makes you happy and what you'll tell people makes you happy, it's usually kind of two different things, because maybe what makes us happy is either not glamorous or not popular or embarrassing or whatever else, So sometimes your mentors figure you out much better than you figure yourself out. And when he called me up and he said, look, okay, 2.5 years of private equity, okay, you had fun, and I'm sure you know how to do the deals, but he told me, look, you should be running companies, and that's what you're meant for. I've got this opportunity for you. Come back, and we'll work together. And part of the hope was that at some point he was going to retire, and maybe I could be a candidate to be his successor. That was down the road. Came back to run that business. Ran that for 5.5 years. About halfway through, we came to the conclusion that the company itself was going to have to take its power business and merge it with somebody else, because we didn't have the means to develop the next generation of power generation products. And this led to a really complicated transaction where General Electric bought 70% of that company, including my business. And I ended up part of General Electric, and combining my business with the General Electric business. I was in charge of putting the businesses together and to be the CEO afterwards. I put the businesses together. I made sure that there was a team that worked well with G people and Alstom people. And then I left to join Sulzer.
Okay. All right. So what was your job at Sulzer? Was it similar in terms of profile?
Sulzer, a Swiss-German industrial company based in Winterthur. It's publicly traded. So I had been, these other jobs, I was the head of a division within a larger corporate. And this time I was the CEO. I was the top guy in a publicly traded company. And which is something completely different, because when you're a division guy, you're not the one who's talking to shareholders. You're not the one that has to arbitrate between the various divisions in the company. There's a lot of things that you have to do as a CEO of a publicly traded company that you don't have to do as a head of a division. So it was a whole, different kind of exposure and experience. It was also a company that was struggling. Companies that recruit CEOs from the outside usually are companies that are trying to change. And when you're trying to change, usually it means that either you're not performing or your market is changing and you have to transform. So it goes back to one of the earlier points I made, which is that you have to know what you are. And if you are a person that goes from one company to another, in all likelihood, the people that are going to hire you are people that are trying to change something or fix something. And Sulzer was trying to fix its strategy. It was trying to fix its cost structure. It was trying to fix its share price performance. And it had a really complicated governance because it was a publicly traded business, still is, but it also had a large Russian shareholder that nobody really knew how to deal with. And that became something complicated over time, because I ran Sulzer for 6 years. 3 years into my tenure, that Russian shareholder got put under US sanctions. And then we had to do a complicated operation where we bought some of his shares so that he would become a minority shareholder. And it was very complicated. It was crisis management. But the main job at Sulzer was repositioning the company. It was a company that was a leader in pumps and separation equipment for the chemical industry. And in pumps, it mostly did oil and gas. And in separation equipment, it mostly did refineries. And this was 2015. If you're in oil and gas and refineries, you're not well positioned, because sustainability is the way forward. And there's a moment where we'll get to peak oil, and there's a moment where that production will drop. And also, as a publicly traded company, if you're trying to get investors excited about you being 55% oil and gas, which was Sulzer in 2015, is not a good play. So what we did is we analyzed what we were good at, and we tried to figure out where that skill set was applicable to something that was growing faster and more sustainable. And the pump business, which was mostly an oil and gas pump business, became 5 years later, the most important business in pumps for Sulzer was wastewater. They're very complicated pumps, because there's all sorts of stuff in wastewater that is not always liquid. And the most important business in the chemical separation business became biopolymers, bioplastics, because it's the same technology. So you take what you're good at and you try to figure out which market it's applicable to. And that's what we did at Sulzer. It went really well. I ran the company for 6 years. I handed the baton, to an internal successor, and the company's been doing even better since. So.
All right. I'm sure the students very likely will have questions on that part of your job. So let's move on to AkzoNobel.
AkzoNobel.
How did that change, that switch come about, and what are you doing nowadays?
So I did something else that that people will tell you not to do, and actually people are right on this one, which is that I left Sulzer not knowing what my next job was going to be. I wanted it to be an internal succession. There were 2 internal candidates that made sense. Both of them were going to leave because they wanted to be the top guy, and it was time. So there was a timing issue where I felt like if I wait, then we'll lose these guys, and then we can't do an internal succession. And also I wanted to time it with the end of a financial year, so that was an organized succession, and it felt seamless to investors. So I handed over my responsibilities at the end of the year, and I went home. And then I started having conversations again. because I was on the market. I mean, it's a lot easier to do that at 50, 51, 52. I left, it was 2000, I'm lost. What year are we in? I left early 2022, so I just turned 52. It's a lot easier to do at 52 when you have a little bit of money in the bank than it is to do at 31 when you have a baby at home and a wife who leaves you errands. But I love my wife, and she was right to leave me errands, so I had time. But so I left, and I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to think about what I want to do next and have conversations. And I had a bunch of conversations about really different opportunities in really different fields. In some cases, publicly traded companies, in some cases, privately held companies, even private equity. And AkzoNobel was exciting and ticked a lot of the boxes that I had in my mind. And I joined Akzo at the end of 2022, essentially to continue the transformation of the company. AkzoNobel is a really exciting company that has wonderful products, that has strong brands, that has strong market positions in paints and coatings. So 40% of what we do is decorative paint, paint to paint your house, pretty much. And 60% is industrial paints for boats, ships, your iPhone, your iPad, your computer, your car. So it's 40% B2C, 60% B2B. It's a chemical business in the sense that we mix chemical products to make a product, but it's also a retail business for part of it. It's a distribution business. It has strategic complexity, and the main challenge at Akzo that we're fixing is that it's a wonderful company, once again, with great products and great market positions that wasn't always very good at generating growth. And in part because it wasn't very good at delivering the product in time. So 132 factories around the world, what's on-time delivery, what's capacity utilization, what's equipment availability, to make the business industrially efficient and to position the business for growth, which were two things that Akzo did not do very well and that we're working on and improving.
Okay, so let me ask two maybe not quick follow-up questions. So do you still remember your first day or first days as a CEO of AkzoNobel, coming in from the outside in some ways? What was that like? And the second question is, what does the future hold for AkzoNobel? Where do you want to take the company?
Yeah, my first day, whether it was at Akzo or at Sulzer, were not scary in the sense that the more you do things, the more you kind of figure things out. It doesn't mean you're comfortable, but it means that you know that you should not feel comfortable. So the first time I ran a large business was the grid business when I went back to Alstom, and that business was 20,000 people and 4 or 5 billion euros of revenue. And I remember being really scared the first 2 weeks. I don't know if people tell you they're scared, but everybody's scared at some point. Right? I remember being really scared because it felt like a big step, and the company was not performing, and it was really, really complicated. And my predecessor had essentially kind of given me the key and left because he had something else to do. So there was really like no transition at a time when the business was really hurting. So I remember that as being really a challenge, and I remember that as being lonely, and I remember that as being kind of frightening to a certain extent. And the whole challenge, it's like everything in life, it's an element of fear and nervousness is actually a positive, as long as you don't let it paralyze you. And hence the fact that I talk about that rather than Sulzer or Akzo, because Sulzer and AkzoNobel, I joined these companies from the outside. In the case of AkzoNobel, I had a 1-month transition with my predecessor who was really, really helpful. So in many ways that was easier. But also I knew what to expect in terms of what I was going to feel uncomfortable about, the uncertainties I was going to have, and so all the feelings were feelings that I was expecting, and when you're then it's not as big a deal. So it's not. I mean, there's nothing magical about the first 90 days or all the stuff that people tell you. We can talk about that too, but
okay.
I'll hand the questions back to you.
All right. Looking at the strategy of AkzoNobel, you have sustainability-driven innovation, focus on or kind of focusing on specific market segments and industrial excellence. So what about the future of the company? Do you have kind of visions and goals that you would like to achieve? You already achieved an increase in operating margin of 45% within 1 year. So congratulations. So what about the future?
Well, it's about delivering on a recurring and sustainable way. So the profitability improvement that we've delivered over the last 18 months it's great, but when you're a company that has had uneven performance, what investors want first and foremost is they want you to be predictable. So it's really, really important to get into the cycle of I give guidance, I deliver my guidance. I raise the bar. The Americans call that beat and raise. You give a guidance, you beat it, and you raise the guidance. So you have to get into that cycle. But and for that you have to fix a number of things and position the business in the right way. But over time, the challenge and the opportunity for a company like Akzo is that paints, coatings they're chemical products, and the chemical landscape is changing really, really quickly. You had Martin Brudermüller here, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And Martin's a great guy, the CEO of, now the former CEO of BASF. I can't remember how long ago he was here, but BASF is a good example of the fact that the chemical landscape is changing fast. Sustainability is not only the way forward, but is a requirement, and therefore, my industry it has to adapt. But if you want to be a leader, you have to preempt, you have to be more agile, you have to find the opportunities to essentially differentiate by giving the market something it needs. And what we need today is more sustainable products, because there's a number of chemicals that all these companies use that are going to be banned or that are harmful to the environment. And sometimes they're still allowed, but your question is, how quickly can I find a substitute? How quickly can I organize this transition so that not only am I able to deliver a solution that the market needs, but maybe I can drive the transition of the market, because when products become available, then sometimes that fosters regulation also, because if there are alternatives, why not make them mandatory? So for AkzoNobel, it's a big opportunity. But it's also a big opportunity to help our customers. We do things like powder coatings. If you take probably the tripod here, or if you take these windows, the metal components are powder coated. It's not paint. It's not liquid paint. It's powder paint that you put an electrostatic charge on the metal, and you spray a powder, which is paint without liquid. The electrostatic charge makes the particles go where they have to go, so you don't have any waste. When you spray paints, you have waste. Here, you don't have any waste because it goes to the place where you've got the electrostatic charge. And then you heat that door, and then you have that finish. So it's a really great process in terms of there's no waste, so that's more sustainable. There's no VOC, volatile organic compound, because there's no solvents, so that's great for the environment. Only problem is that you've got to bake this thing. You got to heat it, 180 degrees Celsius. That consumes energy. We've developed a range. We're the only company in the industry that's developed a range that we introduced a few months ago that bakes, that cures at 150 degrees Celsius. It's a big impact in terms of either emissions or energy consumption. And that's not driven by regulation, because there's no regulation that says this is the temperature and these are the emissions, but If you do that, then your product's going to sell better because people can not only save on their energy, but they can also reduce their emissions. And a lot of companies have set targets for themselves. So that's the transition, that's the opportunity, and that's the way forward.
All right.
Which is exciting.
It sounds very exciting, and to make these things happen, a company needs people.
Yep.
We have many very good students, future graduates. So why should someone join AkzoNobel besides having a great CEO, of course? Yeah. And what kind of people is AkzoNobel looking for?
Well, you join AkzoNobel if the purpose excites you, and the purpose is, once again, it's sustainability-driven innovation. So if the idea of adapting, a company that's more than 200 years old, if the idea of leading that transition where you get that company positioned for the next 200 years, if you find that exciting, if you find the idea of taking some of these products that are really good products, but have components that either are going to be banned or components that could be substituted by something more sustainable. If you find that interesting, if you find the whole sustainability transition in kind of in a measurable way, this is not theoretical. This is like, okay, we've got this product. This is the formulation. These are the components. What are the alternatives? This is the market. How do we get people to pay for more sustainable products? Fun fact: decorative paints in Europe, European consumers will not pay for more sustainable products. Everybody wants more sustainable products, but if you do a survey, people are willing to pay like €8 a month for more sustainable products overall. I mean, it's a low number. We can't charge a premium for sustainable products in Europe, but we're able to charge a premium for sustainable products in China because there's a notion of buying something more sustainable that's better for you in China, probably in part because, in the days of the one-child policy, making sure that you had biocide-free paints in your house, for example, felt like a good investment to people, and that still prevails in the culture today. So how do I take some of the products that we develop and we sell in China and get people excited about them in Latin America or in Europe? It's all, I find it fascinating, but at the end of the day, I'm not here to sell you AkzoNobel. I guess the objective I've set for myself for today, if I should set myself an objective, is more to kind of give you insights or ideas as to how you make those career decisions. And another lesson is go into something that you're excited about in terms of purpose. If it's just a really good company, but you don't like the product or you don't like talking about it, find something else. So it has to be something that gets you out of bed in the morning. Otherwise, professional life is miserable. So.
When do you get out of bed in the morning, and what does your day look like?
I'm not a morning person, but I have to be.
Okay.
So I'm really not a morning person. I'm one of my best friends is a guy I met because we were the two guys walking their dog at 1 a.m. every night. When our kids were small, we were still living in Paris. I was walking my dog between midnight and 1 a.m. every night, and there was another guy, and we started talking, and he's one of my best friends to this day. So I'm not a morning person, but you have to be culturally adaptable. The last two businesses I ran, AkzoNobel in the Netherlands and Sulzer in Switzerland, these are countries where people start early and they finish early also. So as a CEO, you have to lead by example, and also you have to adapt to the culture of the country or the company. And therefore, I'm in the office at 7:30 in the morning. It hurts every fiber of my nature, but you know, that's life. You adapt.
How many hours do you work? Do you work on the weekends?
I'm trying to say that in a way that's going to be helpful. Well, two things. One is you have to work hard. At the end of the day, everything's competitive. It's the best opportunities come to the people that deliver the best results. You can deliver results by being really, really smart, but honestly, it's a lot safer and it's a lot higher probability to be really hardworking. You know, it's I like to think I'm intelligent, but you don't want to rely only on intelligence. You know, hard work also matters. But having said that, I'm at the age, I make myself sound really, really old. You know, I'm 54, but I'm at the age where you kind of look at your peers and yourself, and you look at who's happy and who's not. And the people that are happy are not the people that have the biggest jobs. The people that are happy are the people that have kids that still talk to them, and partners that still talk to them. So it's which means that you have to find a balance. And my balance mostly is that when the kids were smaller, I'd go home to have dinner with them, and I'd work afterwards again. So that's not great, but you know, my wife was also working, so we both had a lot of work to do, and it was really important to have the moments with the kids. My kids are 20 and 23 now. They're like, I mean, they're like your age, you know. One of them at Goethe in Frankfurt, and the other one at ETH in Zurich. So both at university. So my kids, you know, they're living their own life. But the balance, having friends, having doing things with your partner, having a life outside of work is really, really important. So it's not that I never work on weekends, but it's that I never assume that I'm going to work on weekends, so I don't do it automatically. I mostly try not to. But you know, life is different today. I've got a bunch of devices. I run an international business. Stuff happens all the time. People have time differences. Part of what makes it work for me is that I can compartmentalize. So I can kind of jump into something, try to either give an answer or you know, sort of keep the ball rolling on a number of topics that come my way, and switch back. So you have to be able to, if you get bad news and it obsesses you for the next 3 hours, then you're going to be unhappy in these jobs, and you have to find a job where that's a better fit for your personality. You have to find something that fits the way you function. The way I function is that I have one differentiating skill set as a CEO, which is I can sleep anywhere at any time. Don't let people tell you it's about intelligence. It's about being able to sleep on planes, being able to sleep in taxis going somewhere, being able to recuperate, because these are not jobs where you can say, these are my working hours and this is my rest time. But if you can sleep anywhere at any time, and if you can sleep for small periods, long periods, and kind of it works for you, then life is easier, and I have that skill set. I wish I had other skills, but I've got that one, which is already a good start. Yeah.
All right. Let's wrap up our conversation with a few quick fire questions.
Please.
What music do you listen to?
I've got something really cool, which is that I share a streaming platform with my kids. So we went for like the family group, which means that I see their playlists and they see mine. And therefore, I steal a lot of stuff from them too. But initially, I'm a child of the 1970s, so I was into heavy metal and blues, So, and then over time, I kind of widened. And the first concert I took my son to when he was 9 years old, I took him to see AC/DC with noise canceling headphones. And then my daughter got jealous, and she was 2 years younger. And I told her, in 2 years, I'll take you to see a concert. And she chose, it'd be the equivalent of, God, I don't even know what the equivalent of it would be. It'd be the equivalent of like Sabrina Carpenter or something like that, but like the French version. You guys, does that speak to you guys or not? Like, it's like Taylor Swift, but more teeny bopper. And I went to that concert with my daughter when she turned 9, and I remember it was still in the days of iPods, and we downloaded all the songs, and I knew the lyrics. So my 20-year-old daughter went to see Taylor Swift, and I'm actually really good at Taylor Swift now. So I've got, it slipped into my playlist, but the last concert I went to was like Royal Blood, for those of you guys who do alternative music. So it's not exactly Taylor Swift. So I'm all over the place, but getting abused by my kids about my musical taste is part of the fun.
All right. What about food? What do you like to eat?
I'm the least French person person ever, in the sense that I don't really care about food. I eat really badly. And I drove here because I didn't know how to get here. I was in Paris yesterday. I had to figure out whether I was going to be in Paris or in Zurich this weekend. In the end, I ended up driving from Zurich. So I had like a 3-hour drive. I had like 2 types of Haribo. You do a Haribo, like the crocodiles, and the gummy bears, So I eat really, really badly. I love junk food.
Okay.
And I can survive on pizza and sushi for like forever.
Okay.
But my wife is into food, and she's into healthy eating. So she's the only reason, that plus the fact that I do sports and I'm not obese. Otherwise, I'd be.
Okay. So what about your hobbies? You like to do sports?
Yeah. I do. There's phases in life. There's the phase you're in, which is kind of you're doing sports because you're young and you have too much energy to expend. And then there's a phase where you have small kids, where progressively you stop doing anything because you've got a job and you've got kids, and you spend your time driving there somewhere. And then there's the period where your kids are in their teens and you realize you're fat and flabby and you can't run to the corner without puffing. And then most people start something again. I started running. And then as you get to your 50s, then you've got, this is for guys. Women are different, but for guys, there's an off-ramp, at least in the CEO population. There's 2 types of CEOs in their mid-50s. Everybody kind of starts doing sports again, going to a gym or running or stuff like that. And then in your mid-50s, there's the guys that start letting go and kind of go like, the hell with this, And then there's the guys that go into like extreme stuff, like ultra marathons and all that sort of stuff. And I am not in the extreme sport category. I'm trying not to be in the guys that let go. But what I do is I run 2 or 3 times a week. I'm not a morning person, but I do that in the morning. I have a dog, and my dog likes running, so it's also an obligation. So twice a week I run with my dog, and on weekends, and once a week, if I'm lucky, I manage to go early in the morning, despite the fact that I'm not a morning person. And before Akzo, we were living in Switzerland. One of my kids is still in Switzerland, and I do a little bit of commuting, and I love skiing. Ski touring, where you kind of skin up the mountain kind of thing, which is also it's kind of cardio. I can't go to a gym. It bores. It makes me want to kill myself. And plus, next to my house in Amsterdam, there's a gym, but they all look like you guys. I walked past. I went in once, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. They all have like abdominal muscles. I haven't seen mine since the Carter administration. So, and everybody looks really, really healthy, and I felt like a voyeur, So I said, "The hell with it! I'll continue running and just like all the you get like stuff that you can do at home, So,
all right,
not a whole lot of lessons from that, but.
Please allow me one last question, Greg.
Please.
I mean, you still have a lot of years ahead of you as CEO in the business world. I'm sure of it. Nevertheless, when you look back, in the future at some point, at all that you've accomplished, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah. I'm not playing for effect. Professor Lee told me he'd ask me this question. I was trying to figure out whether I'd give you a philosophical answer or an honest answer, and I'm going to go for honest. Nobody's going to remember me. My legacy doesn't matter. It's kind of like most of us. Kind of like ship sailing in the night. It's not about legacy of kind of looking back or having people look back. I think you have to be. I think you're happier if your ambitions are more modest than that. I hope to have. I hope to have been a good friend, father, partner to my loved ones, and I hope to have helped people develop and give the best of themselves along the way. And what I mean by that is my job is, as a CEO, you don't do a whole lot yourself. It's mostly about finding the right people for the right challenges, helping them achieve things that they might not achieve otherwise, and helping a group actually be better than the sum of its parts. And you can apply that to your personal life, you can apply that to your professional life, but that's if I leave these companies better and better positioned and better armed for the future than they were when I arrived, with people that are fully capable of functioning without me, then I've succeeded. So essentially, my job is to work myself into obsolescence. If there's a team that says why is this guy here and why are we paying them this much? Then that's success. It means that the company is better equipped to function and to succeed. And once again, there's a lot of really unhappy, successful people, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to share your success with people that like you for yourself, and that means that you have to have friends, you have to have family. So manage the balance. Sometimes it's not easy, but it's worth it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the open and captivating conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your insights. My name is Edgar Klein. I'm studying business management in the master degree. And my question is, what role has money played in your journey, and what role does it actually play in your life? Thank you.
It has played an important role. It's really, the politically correct answer is to say, money is not what matters. But the issue is that business life at times feels like it's measured in money. I run a company. We've been around for 200 years. We hope to be around for 200 more years. We have annual guidance and we have a midterm guidance 3 years out. I did investor meetings. There was an investor conference, and you do these meetings where investors ask you questions. I did investor meetings on Tuesday. 90% of the questions I got were about Q2, the next quarter. So people want it. They want it now. They like that I talk about the products, but they want to know what my EBITDA is going to be and whether we're going to deliver the free cash flow. So the nature of these jobs is that there's a lot of things that's measured in financial results. Now, you shouldn't manage a company based on achieving short-term financial results. And the challenge is to understand what makes the company successful in the long term and still manage to deliver the short term. In your personal life, I've made good decisions and bad decisions because of money. My midlife crisis, which I described to you when I went into private equity, was I felt the effort reward ratio was not favorable. I felt I was working really hard and I wasn't making as much money as some of my peers from business school. And I thought, well, if I make more money, I can retire early, But then actually I came to the conclusion that I don't want to retire early. I kind of enjoy what I'm doing, So, and then you also find at some point that there's such a thing as enough money to be happy, which is, and it's very personal. Everybody's different. There's people that have expensive taste, people that don't. I actually don't have expensive taste. I really much struggle to buy stuff for myself. I'm good at. I'm more easily generous with others than I am with myself, and part of it is education. Where your parents came from and all of that. But it took me a long time to figure these things out. So I would say that I did not choose my first job because of money, because the oil industry was not a money-driven decision. I went to business school not because of money. I went to business school because of life. What I mean by that is that I met my wife. My wife's a lawyer. She's German, but she was a lawyer in France for some strange reason. And the job that I had in the oil industry, I was going to move around from one country to the next forever. And she told me, look, you're great, and I'm sure we could be happy together, but if you have this job, it ain't going to happen. So I applied to business school so I could do something else that was actually compatible with the aspiration of the women I want to spend my life with. So it sounds really modern. I'm not sure. She was like, okay, she's not going to be she can't work with me doing this job, so I have to do another job. I went to private equity in part for the money. I left private equity for the money because I realized that at some point, as long as you have enough to live the type of life that you want to live, then it's fine. And then the other thing is that your expectations adjust with your income. So there's a notion of people say like I never have enough. If you're the more you make money, the more you feel that you have to make money because you're. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, some years ago, there was the former CEO of McKinsey went to jail for insider trading, and the whole debate was like, why did he do insider trading? The guy was a millionaire, and there was a profile in, I think, the New York Times, and the article said, he was a millionaire hanging out with billionaires. And when you're a millionaire hanging out with billionaires, you feel poor, So my balance is that I still have the same friends that I had, at university, and even in before that. A lot of my friends have barely know what I do, and their life is they make a lot less money than I do, and we go on holidays together, and I don't function differently on holiday from the way they function. So that means that my needs are not driving my professional decisions because the stuff that makes me happy, the people I spend time with, it calibrates at a level where it's not driving me. Financial decisions are not driving my choices in life. But there was a really interesting, in academia, Professor Lee knows a lot more about academia than I do, so I'll be really careful. But in academia, the current obsession, there's always popular themes. And the current obsession, at least in the US, at Harvard Business School, where I studied, it's the pursuit of happiness. So there's a lot of academic studies and lectures about the pursuit of happiness and what makes you happy. And I think I read a few of these things because when you get when you get older, you start reading that sort of stuff, saying what is happiness about? And one of the lessons from from these academic studies is that the notion that money doesn't make you happy. It's true, money doesn't make you happy, but money, to some level, money allows you to fix a few of the things that make you unhappy from a day-to-day basis. So essentially, if you if you have enough money to repair your car without, when I was a student, I had a really old car and I had a car accident, and I remember thinking I can't repair my car, and I remember thinking, okay, I was giving classes, and I remember thinking I have to give these many classes before I can repair my car. So my car was sitting for a while before I could repair it. It's like day-to-day stuff that impacts your happiness. If you're able to cover those needs, then that's enough to be happy. And those needs are dictated by the kind of people you hang out with. So everybody's different. But once again, I've made good and bad decisions because of money, because it takes time to figure things out. That's the best answer I can give you, but.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hello, sir. My name is Daria, and I study at TOM. Firstly, thank you for visiting us. My question is, who has been your biggest inspiration growing up and why?
It's my dad, but there's not a negative but. I was thinking I don't remember having. I watched a few of the videos of this series, and I thought the mentor question is coming, and the mentor question is difficult for me because I only partially believe in mentors, and my inspiration in terms of who I am today is essentially the way my parents raised me. And I said my dad because my mom was from the generation where a lot of women did not work. But it's my education, the way my parents raised me. My dad had a stressful job. My mom covered for a lot of things that my dad did not do. I think my dad was. I admired him in terms of what he did and how he applied himself and how he committed to what he committed to. My dad had a really good career, but he probably could have done even more. And but he was from a generation where you didn't ask for things, and you didn't. You were loyal. He worked for 34 years for the same company. And when he was 61, he was one of the senior managers in that company. He got fired for cause because he had a disagreement with the new CEO, and the new CEO decided to make him a scapegoat for something. So it was really interesting because I admired my dad for his career, and I admired my dad for how he picked himself up, because 61, he still had a few years of work to go, and he was doing really well, and it ended from one day to the next, And then afterwards, he did a lot of consulting work left and right in order to stay active. But I admired his principles. I admired his dedication. I admired his application. I admired his commitment. And then I admired the fact that my mom was way more emotionally adept than my dad. And that if I had just been raised by my dad, I'd probably be like a wolf, And any emotional intelligence I have comes from my mom. But that's the beauty of having two parents that were really different. And beyond that, I don't remember. I didn't have sports idols, and even in business, I always chose jobs where, people talk about having mentors, and I often chose jobs because of people. I took jobs that, you remember the two experiences where I told you, one, the family office thing for the retail guy where I didn't have a contract, and the other one afterwards were Alstom, where he told me, if it doesn't work out, I'll fire you in 3 months. I took both those jobs because of those guys. I thought, I don't know what the job is, but if I pick the right boss, and then you can call that the right mentor, then good things will happen. So, best answer I can give you. And by the way, the anecdote I told you about my dad and the getting getting fired at 61, through no fault of your own, really, but is that also shaped my my personal beliefs. And and this is very non-corporate, but I'm here to give you guys advice. I'm not here to sell you anything. It's manage your own career. Don't believe that your company is going to manage your career, okay? Companies don't manage careers. They say they do, but mostly we try to manage businesses, and we need people for that, and good people, but it's really, really hard to manage somebody's career over a long period, because we as companies don't always understand your aspirations. We don't always understand what's happening in your life. And also our vested interest is that you're committed to us, and to some extent that you're dependent on us, because if you're good, we want you to stay, not leave. And if you stay too long, especially in this world, too long with one company, there's always a moment where people are like, well, this person's been with like 15 years with that company. Is he or she adaptable to something else? So part of my moving around and trying different things was always this idea that I wanted to be marketable. And I thought that I would be marketable if I was able to show that I was able to work in different environments on different topics in different cultures. And maybe I pushed it a little bit too far, but it's the byproduct of that. It's the idea that you make your own luck, and to some extent you manage your own path, and you build yourself by making sure that you think about your decision tree, rather than to let people think about it for you. Anyway, it got suddenly a lot more philosophical than you were looking for, but it's Friday afternoon,
Good afternoon. My name is Kashin, and I'm a master student at TUM. So I'm quite interested in what is the most significant changes in mindset after you became CEO. Is it a natural thing for you after you work a lot for that?
Thank you. It's a really good question, and let me try to answer that intelligently. The first thing is that being CEO, it's not a career and it's not an aspiration. It's kind of like something that happens along the way. So you don't start in your 20s by saying, I want to be CEO. I think you start in your 20s by saying, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to work in healthcare, or I want to be an architect, or I like to build products, and then as you develop, your skill sets become more or less suitable for certain jobs. You figure out whether you know how to lead people. Some of you guys have activities on this campus where you lead associations or projects, and you already get a feel for whether you're able to lead people or not, whether you enjoy it, whether you enjoy the responsibility. Everybody's different. There's people that enjoy that spotlight, enjoy those responsibilities, and people that don't. And then over time, if you have those qualities and those aspirations, then you can look for these opportunities. But you develop along the way. You don't become CEO. First, you run, I don't know, like a department, and maybe you run a small business, and maybe you run a country, in different companies. So there's steps, and then CEO is there's a lot of different CEOs. There's CEOs of startups, or there's CEOs of large publicly traded companies. The skill set's not the same. So you have to find whatever is the right skill set for you. But at the end of the day, what are the qualities you need to be CEO? You don't have to be an extrovert or an introvert. It doesn't really matter. You just have to be comfortable interacting with people. I mean, there are CEOs that are not comfortable interacting with people, but it's really difficult to be effective if you don't like the contact. So you have to enjoy interacting. If you want to be a good CEO, you have to be a good listener. And then beyond that, you have to, I think you have to enjoy putting things together so that people can give the best of themselves. And if you want to be a really good CEO, you have to be willing to share the credit and the rewards and make sure that people get rewarded for what they do. And if you do that, then you become a good leader. And as you're seen as a good leader, then at some point maybe you're CEO of something. But it's a strange job, you know. It's I'm here talking to you guys. I'm giving you my life stories. Are my life stories interesting? I mean, because I make them entertaining. But I mean, should I really be giving you advice? Should I be leading the way for a company of 35,000 people? It's really weird. If you're reflective, it's really strange to tell yourself that you have 35,000 people that look at you in terms of direction. So, and this is why the two populations in which you find the most significant proportion of psychopaths are CEOs and serial killers. You know, because it's essentially it's a job where there's moments in time where you have to have a little bit of a suspension of disbelief. You have to be able to believe that you're capable of leading all these people and you're capable of defining a strategy and a course and a direction, and most people are not, and actually I'm not. But what makes me effective as a CEO is I know how to. I'm pretty good at getting the best out of people. I'm pretty good at getting people to work with me, even when they're very different from me. And therefore, I rely, you know, it's kind of my oil rig thing. I rely on the team. But I rely on the team, but my job is to make sure that decisions are made and action is undertaken. Because a lot of really intelligent people don't decide and don't do. And you have, at the end of the day, these are jobs for doers. So, there wasn't really a come to Jesus moment where suddenly you're like, I've seen the light, I should be CEO. It's more like one job, bigger job, bigger job, bigger job. At some point, somebody gives you an opportunity. And remember what I said earlier? You're really, really scared when you get the call. And then a few weeks later, you go like, oh, maybe I kind of know how to do this. And then over time, you figure it out. You know? But you can't do it by yourself. And if you try it, you know, bad things are going to happen. And it's a team sport. So if you don't like working with people, this is not a good job to have.
I'm Mohit. I'm studying Mastering in Management at TUM. And you say that you juggle like a dozen jobs before, and you also switched industries.
Yep.
So from the perspective of running a business, how important do you think is the technical expertise in the domain that you're venturing into?
I studied engineering. I've got a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering. The single worst topic, the class on which I systematically got the worst grades was chemistry. Because there was some chemistry, you know, there's like a common trunk at the beginning of mechanical engineering. I was horrible at chemistry. I run a chemical business. I ran mechanical engineering businesses, you know, turbines, pumps, this is like mechanical stuff. But I ran an air pollution control business, which is a combination of mechanical and chemical. I ran an electrical business, which is also very different. So, and I did private equity, which is more financial in many ways. So I don't think you should overweight over the long term. What you're studying today is not so relevant for what you're going to be good at in 20 years, but it's really relevant for how you're going to get there. Because when you come out of this program, you'll be hired for things that you you have a little bit of experience and a little bit of knowledge in, which means that it's a lot easier to get a job if you get a job that fits with your coursework, your degree. But then afterwards, you have to figure out what you like, and if what you're interested in is far from what your degree is in. I don't know, if you studied mathematics and you end up doing machine learning in the financial sector. You end up being a quant. And as you are a quant and you're investing in healthcare companies, you realize that you're really, really interested in the healthcare sector, and that pharma is an interesting topic for you. Then what you figure out is what part of what you do today is somewhat applicable to what you're interested in, and you use that as a transition. So, for example, there's a significant need for mathematicians and big data people and artificial intelligence and drug development. So you find that as your entry point, and maybe you come to the conclusion that what you like is the commercial aspect of it, and then you kind of use that as a. So it's essentially you jump from one thing to the next, and that's, although it might not come across in the way I describe my career, it's kind of what I did. You try to not go into something that's a dead end. So you try to not go into something where if it doesn't work out, you're stuck and there's no way back. You try to do something where what you've done before is actually helpful in some way as a building block for what you're going to do later. Which is why you shouldn't rely on companies to manage your career, because you're the only one who knows what makes you tick, and therefore you've got to figure out how the pieces fit.
Hello, thank you so much for your insights. My name is Ara Churumi. I'm a master student at TUM. And I wanted to ask you, how did you find the courage to try new things in a world full of uncertainties? How did you cope with the uncertainties? Because I think a lot of my colleagues have such a feelings and are anxious about their future. They should make the right decision. They should go to the right path. How did you cope with that?
It's a really important question, and the semi-ironical answer is that you have to be a little bit delusional, but the more important answer is that we're all scared of things. It's the unknown is scary. A lot of us study things so that we feel some sense of control in what we're going to do. I've done this, so I know how it works, and therefore I can. But if you're gonna do, I think if you're gonna do great things, and you can define great things in a lot of different ways. You can stay in the same industry and be the best product guy in that industry, and that's great, Or you can be a CEO, totally different. But if you're gonna do great things, at some point you have to find the courage to try things that you're not comfortable with, and where you don't have all the skills and you're not sure that you're going to succeed. Because if you only do things where you know you're going to succeed, then essentially it's a safe path, but it's a really flat path, So if you're ambitious, or if you feel that you have a calling, or if you're easily bored, and you're trying to find things that are exciting, a great character trait to have is the ability to control your fear and to suspend your inhibitions and to just do things. A lot of the jobs that I took, I did not know how to do, but I'm not crazy and I'm not delusional, so I knew I did not know how to do them. But I relied on the fact that I know I'm a quick learner, and I'm not embarrassed to ask questions, and therefore I was betting on myself. I was betting on I'll be quick enough in asking questions and kind of synthesizing all of that into knowledge that I can apply to that job, so that by the time people would realize I have no clue what the hell I'm doing, I'll actually start having a clue what the hell I'm doing. Yeah. So it's everybody's different, but being able to ask questions and to listen to the answers and then to decipher them into something that's usable is a really important skill to have. And if you have that, then you can bet on yourself and try things that you don't know how to do. But most people are afraid to do that, either because either because they don't like the lack of control, or because they feel it's kind of like the imposter syndrome. Like, oh, but if I take this job and like people will see that I don't know what I'm doing. But look, most people given the chance can figure things out. The only question is, can you figure things out fast enough? So I encourage. One of the wonderful things I did, the reason why I'm in this job today, and I'm not saying that you should aspire to be in this job. There are a lot of people that have really different jobs at all levels of society that are as happy or more than I am. So this is not an ambition that you should have. But the reason I'm in this job is that it's because I was not scared of trying things that I did not know how to do. But I did it always in a calculated manner, always thinking, what do I need to do? Who do I need to talk to? How do I need to function in order to backfill before it becomes obvious that I'm not qualified for this job? So sometimes it works too, and sometimes.
Hi, sir. My name is Zain. My question is, can you describe a particularly difficult decision you had to make as a CEO of AkzoNobel, and what's the thought process behind it? And thank you.
Well, AkzoNobel, it's been a year and a half, and that year and a half has been really fruitful. But AkzoNobel was a company that was already on a transformation path and that was already doing a lot of good things. So I don't have a good example of something dramatic to give you. It's more a lot of smaller decisions, really impactful decisions for the businesses. But Akzo is pretty much 20 different businesses. They're all paints and coating businesses, but they all have different markets and different needs. So all these decisions, it's more the granularity that's a challenge. But if I give you an example that answers your question, but it's not an Akzo example, it's a Sulzer example. Sulzer, I'd been running Sulzer for 2.5 years, and remember what I said about work-life balance and making sure that your kids still speak to you at some point in their life when they're. My son was 18. He was in his last year of gymnasium, and he'd qualified for like a ski championship, like a French ski championship, a junior thing. He was really excited about it. We were living in Switzerland. It was in the French Alps. It was over a long weekend. You have to get there Thursday night. I took the Friday off. I drove him there, and my aim was to watch him compete. And on the Friday afternoon, I was watching him. Practice, and I got a text message, and the text message was from our general counsel that said, our main shareholder, we were publicly traded, but we had this Russian shareholder, has just been put under US sanctions. And it was a Friday afternoon, because they did that in Washington, D.C. on Friday morning, so it's Friday afternoon in Europe. And this was 2018. It wasn't for Ukraine, because that Russian shareholder is actually a Ukrainian Jew, so he's not, people say Russian, but he's a Ukrainian Jew. He got put under US sanctions for interfering with US elections. Don't ask me to get into what that means, but what I did not understand, and nobody understood, is that the US had just changed their sanction laws, and any company in which a sanctioned person had more than 50% of the capital was automatically under sanctions too. And he had more than 50% of Sulzer. So as I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on and how I was going to tell my son that I was going to abandon him on the mountain and go back to Zurich, we started getting messages from our banks saying we're blocking all the credit cards. We had 2,000 field people in the field that couldn't pay for their plane tickets or their hotel room. On Saturday morning, we weren't able to transact in dollars. Over the weekend, we had customers driving into our facilities, picking up half-finished equipment, saying, "You guys are going to disappear as a company because the U.S. has blocked you. We'll take what we can take, and good luck." And all of that when the whole management team was supposed to leave for China at the end of the weekend because we had big business reviews in China in our business. So I had to figure out what to do. The first thing I had to figure out was, do I send the management team to China or do I say everybody stays here? And then how do we work on this? So I'll give you the short version, and if you're interested, I'll give you the longer version afterwards. But the short version is I sent everybody to China except the CFO and myself. The CFO, by the way, was Chinese, or we had a. I had just appointed a. I'm gonna make myself sound like a supporter of diversity, which I am. I appointed a Chinese woman as CFO to a Swiss-German company, that's the positive. The negative is she'd been in the job for 4 days. So Jill and I stayed, and everybody else we sent to China, and we said, you guys behave as if it's business as usual. So they were doing business reviews and meeting customers, and we're saying, oh yeah, it's a misunderstanding with the US, everything will be fine, Fake it until you make it. And in parallel, over the weekend, we were negotiating with the Russian shareholder, and we were retaining lawyers in the US, and we essentially, over the weekend, we managed to buy part of our capital back from the Russian shareholder, and we managed to do that and have a 172-page submission to OFAC, which is the US Treasury, which you need in order to get out of the sanctions. And we had that with them on Monday morning at 7 in the morning. All of that with a team of 10 people. And all the people that were on this team, apart from myself, the CFO, and the general counsel, they were all like more junior people. So I think if there's lessons, it's sometimes the most important part of the job is to not give a sense of panic. Show people that the earth is still rotating, and that the sun will come up tomorrow, and that we have a plan, even if you don't really have a plan. 2, good ideas don't come from the most senior people. You have to get the most qualified people for the task that you have, and seniority doesn't really matter. And 3, you have to listen. I drove back from the French Alps on really early on Saturday morning. I did calls on Friday, and then because it was like 5 in the afternoon, I drove back. I left at like 4 in the morning. I was at 10 o'clock in the office, and while I was driving, I was thinking and doing phone calls and all of that, and I arrived in the office, and I said, I know what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. And I had like 10 people listening to me, including some of the more junior people, and after I said, this is what we're going to do, everybody went quiet. And then we're like, well, we thought about it too, and we think actually there's another way. And it turns out their idea was better than mine, actually. So even when you're in a hurry, you save a lot of time by listening. At some point, you have to move to implementation, but a little bit of listening too helps a lot. So, there's a lot of difficult decisions. That was crisis management, and then there's difficult decisions on people. You have really, really good people that are really not good at their job, and you feel bad because they were good at their previous job, and you put them in that new job, and now they're underperforming in that new job, and you go like, can I reposition that person? Do I have to fire that person? These are personally complicated things, because sometimes the right answer is not the answer you would do just as a person. It's sometimes But yeah, lots of examples. Is that?
All right. Thank you very much for a wonderful visit, Greg.